He's gone from billion-dollar mansions to a concrete cell crawling with roaches, and now Sean Diddy Combs is begging for mercy. In a stunning twist, Donald Trump has confirmed that Diddy has been reaching out asking for a presidential pardon. Yes. The same Diddy who once mocked Trump publicly is now pleading for his help from behind bars. This revelation hit the media like a thunderclap. Trump, in his usual tone of half-serious humor, told reporters, "You know who's been asking for a pardon. Puff. Daddy has been calling." Whether it was said in jest or not, those words exposed what insiders had whispered for weeks. Diddy is desperate, reports say he's mentally unraveling at the Metropolitan Detention Center, a place notorious for overcrowding, unsanitary food, and violence. His lawyers are now firing off legal letters, begging the court to move him to a low-security prison in New Jersey, one where he can rehabilitate and receive treatment. But behind that polite legal language is a man, panicking, begging, doing whatever he can to survive. And that's where the story gets darker. Because as his legal team scrambles, the same court filings reveal a man haunted by paranoia, guilt, and the ghosts of his own past. What was once untouchable, power has turned into raw, unfiltered fear. Every headline, every leaked document chips away at the myth of invincibility Diddy built over decades. And now even his freedom depends on a man he once openly despised. So what really pushed Diddy to this point? And why did Trump decide to speak up now? Let's break down everything from the legal filings to Trump's public statement to the unraveling of one of hip-hop's most powerful figures. When Donald Trump speaks, the world listens even when he's joking. So when he casually dropped Diddy's name during a press conference, the internet ignited instantly. Trump had been asked about another high-profile case, the appeal rejection of Ghislaine Maxwell, when he suddenly pivoted saying, "You know who's been asking for a pardon? Puff Daddy has been calling." The room froze for a second. Reporters exchanged looks, wondering if he was serious or simply stirring chaos like he often does. But for Diddy, that one sentence hit harder than any headline could. Because now, his desperation wasn't a rumor, it was confirmed by the one man who could actually grant his freedom. Within hours, the clip spread across social media. On Twitter, Puff Daddy trended for the first time in years. Memes exploded late night. Shows made jokes and political commentators debated whether Trump was hinting at a real possibility. But beneath the spectacle lies an uncomfortable truth. Diddy needs Trump, and Trump knows it. For a man who built his empire on control, this must feel like a nightmare. Just a few years ago, Diddy was preaching about power, legacy, and independence. Now he's reportedly depending on a former president. He publicly criticized during the 2020 campaign, calling him dangerous and bad for the culture. The irony is almost cinematic. Trump, the ultimate showman, gets to publicly toy with the idea of forgiveness, while Diddy's team scrambles behind the scenes to make that fantasy real. People close to Trump say he loves moments like this when headlines shift back in his direction. Whether or not he ever signs a pardon doesn't matter yet. For now, the attention alone is the reward. And for Diddy, that spotlight burns hotter than ever. Every quote, every smirk from Trump reinforces a message. You're no longer in control. And as the cameras fade from the press room, Diddy sits in a cold cell, realizing the same voice that could save him is also the one reminding him just how powerless he's become. The Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn is not a place for the rich or the powerful. It's a place for the forgotten. And for Sean Diddy Combs, it's become a personal hell. Sources close to his legal team describe a man who has gone from commanding entourages to begging guards for basic necessities. No private chefs, no silk sheets, just steel bunks, fluorescent lights that never dim, and food crawling with maggots. Has surrounded by 20 men in a cramped dorm, sharing one grimy bathroom. The air smells of sweat bleach and desperation. For a man who once demanded perfection in everything around him, that loss of control is torture in itself. Insiders say Diddy rarely sleeps. He paces the floor at night, replaying the headlines, the accusations, the downfall. He's terrified not just of violence, but of the silence that follows when the noise of fame disappears. And according to newly filed legal documents, his lawyers are pleading with the judge for a transfer to a low-security facility in New Jersey, FCI Fort Dix, claiming it would allow him to receive drug treatment, therapy, and family rehabilitation. On paper, it sounds noble. In reality, it's a lifeline. His attorneys argue that Diddy's life is at risk inside MDC. They say he's been targeted by other inmates, that someone even planned to shank him. Celebrity inmates often become instant prey, a mix of envy and opportunity that makes every step dangerous. Mark Geragos, one of Diddy's longtime lawyers, has publicly voiced those fears, claiming his client has a target on his back. And while that phrase sounds like legal dramatics, anyone who knows the MDC's reputation understands it's not an exaggeration. For Diddy, the fear is layered. It's not just about being attacked, it's about being forgotten. He once owned the room wherever he walked now. The world moves on without him. Each new lawsuit, each new story chips away at what's left of his image. The psychological pressure is immense. Reports from those who've seen him describe a man withdrawn, talking less, eating little, and increasingly paranoid. He doesn't trust anyone, not the guards, not his lawyers, not even the system that once seemed to bend for him. His team says this is why he needs out, not to escape justice, but to keep from losing his mind completely. But to many watching, that argument feels like just another privilege play. Because in the eyes of the public, the same man who lived without accountability now struggles to survive under the same rules as everyone else. And that's where the tension builds. Is Diddy the victim of a brutal environment, or finally facing the reality that power doesn't follow you behind bars? While Diddy struggles to survive behind bars, his lawyers are fighting a different kind of battle, one of paperwork, persuasion, and power. The filings coming out of his legal team read like a cry for help, mixed with controlled fury. At the center of it all, a formal request to the court asking Judge Arun to recommend Diddy's transfer from the MDC Brooklyn to FCI Fort Dix, a low-security federal institution in New Jersey. The letter sent by attorney Teeny Garagos paints a picture of a man in emotional and physical decline. It emphasizes Diddy's need for drug rehabilitation, mental health treatment, and access to family visitation, all things that Fort Dix could offer, but the MDC cannot. But here's where the story twists. Only days before filing that request, Diddy's lawyers were attacking the same judge. They now need to convince court transcripts show them accusing Judge Arun of acting like a 13th juror, claiming he had overstepped boundaries and shown bias during sentencing. It was a public scolding, bold, maybe even reckless, and now that tension lingers over every legal move they make. People close to the courtroom say the judge was not amused. He reportedly told the defense their tone was disrespectful, a word that carries weight when spoken by a federal judge. And now that same judge holds influence over Diddy's prison fate. If there's ever been a moment where pride meets desperation, it's this one. Because while the legal team tries to present their case as humanitarian, observers see it for what it really is, a tactical retreat. They're not just asking for compassion, they're trying to repair burned bridges, hoping the same system they antagonized will show mercy. Behind closed doors, lawyers are said to be divided. Some want to push harder to file emergency motions to appeal to go public. Others warn that too much noise might backfire, that the court could dig in its heels out of principle. Meanwhile, Diddy's family and inner circle are lobbying quietly, reaching out to anyone with influence, even revisiting old political connections that once benefited him. The phrase executive clemency is being whispered again, a reminder that if all else fails in court, there's still one man with the power to override it all: Donald Trump, and that's the real game being played here. It's not just about transferring prisons, it's about creating a legal and media narrative strong enough to justify a pardon. Every filing, every statement, every leak is part of that long play. But with every move his team makes, they also risk exposing more of Diddy's fragility, the side of him the public was never meant to see, and the judge, now under scrutiny himself, may decide to teach a harsh lesson about respect, power, and accountability. Because in the federal system, it's not the loudest voice that wins, it's the one that knows when to kneel before the court that holds your freedom in its hands. Every scandal has a breaking point, and for Sean Diddy Combs, it isn't just the prison walls closing in. It's the confrontation with his own mind. Those who've seen him recently describe a man fractured by exhaustion and regret. The charisma, the confidence, the signature grin, all replaced by silence and paranoia. According to reports, he barely eats, stares into space for hours, and avoids eye contact with guards. Some days, he doesn't speak at all. His lawyers call it severe psychological stress. But to those familiar with his story, it feels like the inevitable crash of someone who's been running from himself for decades. Diddy's attorneys in one of the filings referenced his long-standing trauma. And that phrase alone sparked intense debate, because behind the diamond watches and bravado lies a man who from an early age learned that control equals survival.